All right, look, we've got to start with the breaking news as we record this podcast Thursday morning. The European Court of Justice has ruled that FIFA and UEFA rules blocking a potential European Super League were unlawful. The expectation, of course, being that it will open the door for clubs like Barcelona, Real Madrid to try again. James, you've spoken to the club this morning. What's their position on it?
Well, Liverpool insist their position is unchanged. I think I don't think this ruling changes anything really, because it's not as if it was a legal barrier that stopped Liverpool from signing up back in 2021. It was more the sheer force of the backlash that was felt that led to Fenway Sports Group, the owners, issuing what was a pretty grovelling apology at the time. And I did an interview with Tom Werner, Liverpool's chairman, last year ahead of the Champions League final, and I asked him about it then, because over the last couple of years, this has always reared its head every so often, and he said, we will not go back in. We will not sign up to a breakaway league. I think his wording was, it's in our rearview mirror. We've acknowledged it was a mistake, and certainly Liverpool say their stance remains exactly the same on that.
Okay, let's get into this. Our final Athletic Football podcast, mine anyway, before the Christmas break. And for this, we've roped in none other than the Athletics Liverpool writer, James Pearce. Right, James, good to have you here. Let's talk Liverpool, right? What a win yesterday. A bit of a bounce back from Manchester United, which felt like a bit of a stalemate. And, Jurgen Klopp has spoken about it. I know there's been spats between Van Dijk and Roy Keane about that match, but back to winning ways and a bit more convincing from Liverpool.
Yeah, it was the perfect riposte, really, to what was a pretty dour performance against Manchester United. And I think it was just one of those days that kind of left you asking a lot of questions in terms of where exactly are Liverpool at, because it was underwhelming, especially when you felt that it was a real opportunity to kind of inflict some more misery on their arch rivals. They couldn't take advantage of that. But yeah, it was certainly everything that Jurgen Klopp had demanded in terms of delivering a response, because 6 changes, it could easily have been a bit disjointed, but in fact that freshness gave Liverpool the kind of fluency and control that probably haven't seen since they beat Brentford in the early part of November, because even though they've been winning games since then, it's been a struggle and there's been heroic fight backs and scrappy wins. But yeah, that was winning in style at Anfield on Wednesday night, because they absolutely dismantled West Ham.
Yeah, I was just thinking when I saw the Carabao Cup semi-final draw yesterday, I was thinking, whoa, this isn't actually bad for Liverpool. You've got Fulham in the next round, and then the other semi-final is between Chelsea and Middlesbrough. So, get past Fulham. Chelsea, Middlesbrough sitting in the final. You'd like to think Liverpool fans have got to be licking their lips just a little bit. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but just a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. Liverpool, if Liverpool played to their capabilities, they should now go on and win the Carabao Cup. There's no doubt about that. I think you'd expect it to be a Liverpool-Chelsea final. I think as much as Chelsea have struggled this season, and and there's a lot of issues there in terms of some of the recruitment decisions they've made and the money that's been squandered, but with the star talent there, Chelsea still have the ability to raise it, I think, especially on a one-off final appearance. But yeah, I think when you speak to the players and the staff at Liverpool, they see the Carabao Cup as really important in terms of what it could do in terms of energising what is essentially a new look team. Klopp this season has talked about this being, he said, it might be my year 8. He said, but for this group, it's year 1, because it is a very new dynamic, and they feel that 2 years ago when Liverpool won the Carabao Cup, they got great momentum off the back of that, went on and won the FA Cup, missed out on the Premier League by the the most narrow margins, missed out on the Champions League as well in the final to Real Madrid. So I think, they certainly don't see this as kind of getting in the way and a distraction. It makes for a busy January, but I think the way as well that Klopp has been able to rotate the squad and give people on the fringes more game time. yeah, the Carabao Cup has had a real energising impact on the whole squad.
Yeah, we look at this sort of Liverpool 2.0, and I guess ambitions from the top end of the season. From what I was hearing anyway, and you're probably more privy to it than I am, as top four felt like a real possibility or a really solid ambition. Now Liverpool are in a position where if they beat Arsenal on Saturday, they go top of the league. Are you surprised by how this is all kind of going? Because I've said it before, whisper it quietly, don't write off Liverpool.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they've massively exceeded expectations so far. I think rewind to August, and it was a bit of a step into the unknown, really, because they'd lost 6 senior players. I think if you add it all up, it was about just over 1,600 appearances for the club between them. And you kind of never really know how that dynamic is going to shift, because it is rare to lose your captain and your vice captain in Milner and Henderson in such quick succession. Of course, the interest from Saudi Arabia kind of increased the size of the rebuilding job in midfield, because Klopp hadn't intended to move Henderson or Fabinho on. You had the unwanted distraction of the pursuit of Mohamed Salah, and Liverpool having to dig their heels in over that. And then, when you bring in 4 midfielders, only one of which had played Premier League football previously, I don't think you can be too sure in terms of how quickly they'll adapt to the different challenge that poses. So, there's been a lot of positives so far. I think they've won a lot of points from losing positions. I think it's something like 18 points already, with more than anyone else in the Premier League, which suggests that there's a great resilience there in terms of coming back when the chips are down. But the flip side of that is there's issues there performance wise that still need to be ironed out. So that's why I think no one I speak to on Merseyside is getting too carried away, because I think probably 2 reasons. One is they didn't expect to be up there this season. It feels like this is kind of ahead of schedule for this team. And secondly, the fact that it's not like Liverpool are consistently playing like a team that has what it takes to go on and become champions. I think they've still got plenty to prove. I think performance-wise, it's certainly very different to 29-20, when they were week after week, just winning just with such consummate ease and keeping opponents at arm's length. It's different at the minute.
Yeah, I was thinking, what's different about last night, and yes, of course, this is Liverpool season in many respects. Sometimes they do very brilliantly, sometimes they sort of have stalemates, but the emergence of that new role for Trent Alexander-Arnold has been talk of the town, as well as his new boots, right? And we've spoken about this, but did they change that much last night? If anyone didn't watch that match, like what was different from that Man United match, for instance, to the match we saw against West Ham in the Carabao Cup?
Yeah, there was a few interesting tweaks. I mean, it was, for a start, Trent Alexander-Arnold was one of those that was rested initially. Although he still came on for the last half an hour and helped himself to 2 assists. But it is interesting that kind of transition of Trent positionally, because again, on Wednesday night he came on purely as a midfielder rather than this hybrid role that he's filled for most of the time since kind of early April onwards. It was more of a kind of old style Liverpool set up tactically, with Joe Gomez at right back. He was staying very wide, providing the width down the right hand side. And then the biggest thing was the greater energy and dynamism they had in the middle of the park, because that has been lacking a bit recently. They're missing Alexis McAllister. He's going to be out into the new year with a knee injury he suffered against Sheffield United. Szoboszlai, having set ridiculously high standards in his first few months at the club, had definitely gone off the boil probably the last 5 or 6 weeks. Yet against West Ham, he really had his swagger back. He scored a beauty to get them off to a flyer. But it was more his general play as well. Szoboszlai, that felt like a really important step forward for him ahead of facing Arsenal. Curtis Jones was the absolute pick of the bunch. I mean, he was, I think it was quite funny afterwards seeing Klopp and Curtis Jones deep in conversation on the pitch, and Curtis revealed that Klopp had basically he was quizzing him on why he hadn't made a run from a throw-in at half time. And you thought at the time, from 40 yards away. You thought, well, Klopp must be congratulating him on his fantastic 2 goals. But, I think that is the way the Klopp and his staff with Curtis Jones, it almost like always demanding more because they know he's got such a high ceiling and they just want to see it, week in, week out. And Klopp talked about, what a difference it makes when Curtis Jones does things at pace, where he doesn't slow the game down, where he doesn't have too many touches, where he's positive and direct, and Wataru Endo as well. Someone who's been a little bit, probably, I think he's gone under the radar a little bit. I think he's got better and better since he joined Liverpool from Stuttgart. That midfield 3 with Endo, Szoboszlai and Jones, functioned so much better, and that gave Liverpool the control that and the kind of thrust through the middle that they didn't have against Manchester United. And the other interesting tactical tweak was he stuck Darwin Núñez out on the left and played Cody Gakpo through the middle.
And Gakpo scored. Yeah.
Gakpo, I think that was his first goal in 6. He's looked short of confidence, yet he took his goal really well. And even Núñez, even though, I think that's now 11 games without a goal for Darwin Núñez, but he was much more involved, much more in sync with the players around him. Really unlucky with one that came back off the post. And he looked, obviously he played off the left a lot for Benfica. And it just seemed, there was just something about it that seemed to click better for him. And then even on the right-hand side, Harvey Elliott, who I think is really, really underappreciated for someone still only 20, been around so long, not far off 100 appearances for Liverpool already. And I think he could be really important for Liverpool as an option wide right in the coming weeks because Mo Salah is going to be disappearing off to AFCON in January. Young Ben Doak, who would have been next in line in terms of that right wing spot. He suffered the misfortune of a knee injury playing for the under-21s. He needs surgery. So Klopp is going to need another option wide right. And I think Harvey Elliott couldn't have done any more to kind of put his hand up on the night. So it was one of those kind of morale boosting nights that, right the way through the team, you thought, everyone has delivered. And Klopp afterwards made note of the fact that Arsenal have had a full week to prepare. They didn't have, and of course that is an advantage of sorts. But I also think when you have a game like that where you win so emphatically and everyone gets such a lift from it and you perform so well collectively, I don't think that stands Liverpool in bad stead for the weekend.
Yeah, but you say, Arsenal have had a week to prepare. Klopp isn't silly. He's ready and he's getting that crowd ready to make them the 12th man when Arsenal come and play at Anfield, surely.
Yeah, there was 100%. That was the motivation behind his comments in his press conference afterwards, because he knows exactly what he's doing there in terms of he's been around the block enough, hasn't he? In terms of knowing when you can use the media to whip the locals into a frenzy and. It was where the dugout is at Anfield. The press box is only probably 15, 20 meters behind there, and there was a passage in the first half where Klopp kind of turned and kind of admonished some of the fans behind him. It was. I think there were a few moans and groans when an attack broke down, and it was 1-0 to Liverpool at the time. But yeah, I think the atmosphere wasn't that bad at all. It was, actually it was a hell of a lot better than it was against Manchester United. But yeah, Klopp is just, firing people up with those comments, with his, if you're not in the right shape, give your ticket to someone else on Saturday. So I think he knows as well. A 5:30 kickoff under the lights at Anfield just before Christmas. That place will be bouncing come Saturday night.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to circle back to sort of the Núñez thing, but not him in particular, but Gakpo as well, and certain other players. Liverpool aren't shy of shots. They're taking what 34 shots on Sunday and 29 last night. Premier League average per game is 13. They're not scoring necessarily, but is this intentional? Is it just to pepper, the opposition box as much as possible? That one lands if possible.
Yeah, I mean, it is the Klopp way, isn't it? It is this. it's he always wants his teams to play on the front foot and to keep asking questions. I think the biggest difference between the two games, because you're right, when you look at it, you think there wasn't that much difference in terms of the overall shot numbers. Against United, too often it just smacked to desperation, and it was actually decision making really let them down. And they were, I think against United, 15 of the 34 shots were from outside the box, and quite often those shots were taken on when there was an overlap outside them that was ignored, and it was like, this is just a lack of composure, panic, and desperation creeping in. But against West Ham, it was different. The decision making was a lot better. They worked their passing triangles a lot more in terms of getting in behind West Ham, and it could easily have been a heavier beating. I mean, it was tricky as well because West Ham were absolutely dreadful, and a night like that is always difficult to make that kind of judgment of, was it because Liverpool was so good they never let West Ham play, or did West Ham just play into their hands because there was so much space for Liverpool to exploit? I mean, Curtis Jones's, both of his goals really were perfect examples of that. I mean, the first one, he plays a lovely 1-2 with Darwin Núñez, but nobody tracks Curtis Jones's run into the box. And then the second one, he's allowed to run from pretty much the halfway line. And I think it was a half-hearted challenge from Agbonna close to the penalty spot, just before he tucked it away. It was the first kind of tackle that he faced. So yeah, it's, I think Liverpool are always at their best when they're playing at a high tempo, putting teams under pressure, forcing mistakes, and then feeding off that energy from the stands. And that was the issue against Man United, that they didn't do that. They weren't able to sustain it, and it just petered out. But yeah, again, against West Ham, it was just kind of that everything just clicked into gear again.
I know you mentioned it earlier. You were saying, no one's getting too excited yet about the title challenge. But look, I mean, Andy Jones, did a deep dive, and I know Andy very well, on Liverpool's chances, really. And I don't know if this season is so wide open that we're not going to get the massive points tally as City have naturally set over the last few years, which actually opens the door for Liverpool in many ways.
It does, yeah. And I think that's why it was interesting that I think Klopp felt there'd been an overreaction to the game against Man United, because he said, I think one of his comments was, really, is that where we're at now, where we draw with Manchester United, and it's such a negative thing to happen. And I think it kind of dates back to, I think Liverpool fans were a bit scarred by this era where, Liverpool got 97 points and didn't win the title. That is like, even now it just seems absolutely ludicrous. They got 92 points and didn't win the title 2 years ago. So there's almost that, I think it's almost ingrained in your head that you've got to be perfect, and that every slip up is like, oh my God, what are the ramifications of this? And I think you're right, when you look at the Premier League this season, it's different. Man City, not the force they were. I still think I still have them down as title favourites, because I think we've seen before they're capable of rattling off 15 wins on the spin in the spring. And Arsenal, yes, I think are better equipped, having learnt some lessons from last season. And I think that's what gives Liverpool a chance. The fact that it's like, of course they're not perfect, and do they have a dominant holding midfielder? Probably not. Is the front line sparkling all across like as you'd want it to? Not really. Is there a concern there at centre back with depth wise? With losing Joel Matip to a season-ending injury, they're missing Andy Robertson to the back end of January. So there's all these things that you could kind of say, well, that's a doubt, and that's a doubt. But what they're up against isn't kind of perfect either, and I think that's what makes this title race so exciting. And if Liverpool can beat Arsenal on the weekend, they'll go into Christmas, top of the table, in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, in the last 16 of the Europa League. That's one hell of a position to be in terms of having a platform for the second half of the season. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to January. It's always looming over so many teams, FFP, of course, and so many thoughts on who to bring in. But I guess when you're talking about a team like Liverpool, even Arsenal, Manchester City. It's not just bringing players in, it's bringing the right players in. I know Jurgen Klopp is very much on that vibe. I'm not going to get someone unless they are right for this squad. They've got an interim sporting director at the moment in time. What are the plans in terms of January and who might be brought in? Do you know?
I think it'll be a relatively quiet month. I certainly don't think we'll see much activity. There'll be a few players coming back to Liverpool and then potentially going back out again. There's a big decision to make on Fabio Carvalho, who has struggled for game time at RB Leipzig. Liverpool have been in discussions about cutting that loan short and then sending him out somewhere else for the second half of the season. So they've had a number of clubs express interest in terms of giving him the regular game time that he hasn't been able to get in Germany. Similarly, Nat Phillips went on a short-term loan to Celtic just to provide defensive cover. That is up come the turn of the year. And again, I would expect Nat Phillips to be loaned out again in the second half of the season. In terms of incomings, I mean, the most obvious area to address would be centre-back. Yet when I asked Jurgen Klopp about the prospects of doing that recently, he was quite dismissive in terms of, do you really think someone of the required calibre is going to be available at, an acceptable price? He talked about, no one's going to be sticking a centre half under the Christmas tree for us as a gift. So I think a lot will depend on how Liverpool get through the coming weeks with the schedule as it is. Because I think if they were to lose another centre half, then it suddenly goes from, ideally you'd bring someone in to actually you have to bring someone in because there's just too much at stake not to. But, that situation has been eased a little bit by just how impressive Jarell Quansah has been. I mean, this is a young player that's come from nowhere. If you'd have said back in July that he'd end up playing 15, 20 games this season, you just wouldn't have believed it. But he was one of those examples of where Klopp loves to give kids a chance in pre-season. And his attitude is, right, well, go on, show me what you can do. Show me your mentality and your work ethic and if you're good enough, you stay around and you'll get chances. And Quansah has just been an absolute revelation. So, you've got him effectively as backup to Virgil van Dijk, to Gomez, and to Ibrahima Konate. So, I think that would be the one area. I think a lot of fans would say also the holding midfield role. Liverpool have been repeatedly linked with Andre at Fluminense, but again, the people I've spoken to at Liverpool have said, they're unlikely to go back in for him. He was looked at as a possible alternative last summer when they were struggling to do a deal with Southampton for Romeo Lavia. But in the end, they moved on. They moved on from Andre, and I think when you look at Endo growing in confidence as well in that number 6 role, McAllister's obviously played there a lot. I don't think they see that as a real kind of necessity. So it'll be interesting. I think what we know from Liverpool just from recent years is that if a deal presents itself, that sometimes emerges from nowhere at an acceptable price, they'll press the button on it pretty quickly. I mean, the 2 years ago, the noises were, no, we're not going to do anything. And then suddenly Porto needed the money and were willing to sell Luis Diaz. Tottenham suddenly came in for him, and Liverpool knew, okay, it's now or never. If we want this guy, we can't sit still till the summer. We have to do it. And they were very clinical in terms of pulling that one off. 12 months ago, similar situation with PSV and Cody Gakpo. Again, one they thought that was probably for the summer, but PSV were made it clear they were willing to do business. Bang, Liverpool did that. So I don't think you can completely rule it out. But at the minute, I don't think we're going to see a busy January for Liverpool.
Does it worry you though? I mean, Konate's injury record isn't the greatest, and you look at Arsenal's title run last season, and potentially some might say William Saliba dipping off. I know Rob Holding was a good substitute, but wasn't at the same quality.
Yeah.
It's that level of quality that it could be worrying. In terms of being serious about trying to get one over Manchester City and that consistency in squad. And I know what you're saying. You've got these young lads who can do the job, but you're playing the bigger teams. That experience, the Konate, World Cup winner or whatever, would really come into play.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no doubt that if you said to Liverpool fans, what ideally would you like to see them do in January, it would be bring in a centre half. And again, you're right. It's not really the numbers that he's got now. It's more, the availability concerns over those personnel, because Konate, does miss, a lot of football. You only have to look at his record over the last few years. It shows that there's been a number of muscle issues, and you always get the feeling with him that probably 3 games in 6 or 7 days is just too much for him, and you need to rotate. And obviously Gomez, thankfully, touch wood, in the last probably 12, 18 months has stayed fit. But again, he's had some real bad injuries himself in the past. So, and then also you've got the dynamic where Gomez a lot of the time is being used at right back because Klopp is wanting to use Trent Alexander-Arnold in midfield. There's a strong argument that Liverpool actually need to go and buy a right back as well, because it just feels like the direction of travel is Trent Alexander-Arnold becoming a permanent midfielder. And Liverpool, they've got young Conor Bradley, the Northern Ireland international, who came on against West Ham, and is getting more experience. But of course, going back to your earlier point, it's a big ask to suddenly expect a young player like that to play an influential part in a title challenging season. So yeah, you just feel if they don't bolster defensively in January, it just leaves them kind of like teetering a little bit in terms of needing good fortune, because you'd almost have that sense of, well, they're only one injury away from being in real trouble.
Yeah, for sure. I think I need to refrain a little bit. I said Konate World Cup winner. I should say World Cup finalist. He's only 24. Poor kid. I've already given him a World Cup. Anyway, let's move over to the quick one. And I know we haven't got much time, but George Schmatka, interim sporting director for the time being. Is it a thought that Liverpool deal with this, at the end of the season, or is that something that's continuously being looked at? Because obviously, Manchester United are also looking for one as well. Does that, change things up a bit as to who's available?
Yeah, I think Schmadtke, when he came in, he was effectively tempted out of retirement. It was always very clear from all sides this was a short-term appointment. He did the deals in the summer. I think with his background, probably no great coincidence that what was it, three of the 4 that came in were from the Bundesliga. His knowledge and expertise proved valuable in terms of those deals that needed to be negotiated. He gets on well with Klopp, so it's been a decent arrangement. Yeah, I think after I'd expect him, unless there's a change of tact, I'd expect him to still be there throughout the January window. And then I think that period then will be when Liverpool will hopefully recruit a longer-term successor, because there has been, a period of turbulence in terms of that sporting director position, because obviously Michael Edwards was so influential for so long, across everything, this real top operator, and then they thought they had the long-term successor in Julian Ward, who'd been his deputy, yet then Ward walking away, he felt he needed a break from football after just a year in the job. And as you said, Liverpool aren't the only big club looking for one. And I know when they had the search last time, I think there was a dearth of like real top quality candidates who were available, because I think the ones you'd want were under long-term contracts elsewhere. So yeah, I would expect that situation to be addressed in the second half of the season, ahead of next summer, because it's not just in terms of next summer. You want a new person in place before the summer, when you get into grips with exactly what the squad needs. But also there's some contract situations that need to be addressed as well, because coming up to Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, all reaching the last 18 months of their current deals. And that, I think that's a relaxed situation at the minute. But of course, the next 6 months are really important on that, because, then before you know it, we were in the summer and we're talking about players being into their last year, and that always creates, a sideshow.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the summer, and especially around Mo Salah. I mean, I think about this a lot, and I mean, it's been reported that the big sums of money that were on offer in terms of a bid from the Saudi Pro League for him. And also, look, AFCON's on its way. It's going to be a tricky one without Mo Salah, who has provided a fair few goals for Liverpool this season. What's the position here? Are Liverpool reluctant to say that, you know what, he's probably going to leave and they're starting to look at life beyond Mo Salah, or is nothing quite set yet? Is this all still part of the rumour mill?
Yeah, nothing is set. I mean, even rewinding to the summer when, of course, there was this kind of sustained pursuit of Salah from Saudi Arabia, and not once did he ever kind of agitate or push for a move. His attitude was always, it's down to the club. It's this, I'm under contract, I'm fully committed. Unless Liverpool get the kind of offer that they feel they can't say no to. And, as it was, the owners made it absolutely crystal clear there was no price at which they would have done business, because Mo Salah is so influential. And, I think people looked at it and said, come on, in his early 30s, cash in. And I just think that overlooks the fact that Mo Salah is not, he's not your regulation type of player for some, for someone of his age. He's an incredible athlete and specimen in terms of, he still never misses any football. It's like, it's crazy. It's not just his goals and assists, it's his durability, which sets him apart. And yeah, I hope he stays around. I think a lot obviously will hinge on what Salah himself wants, because there was never any chance of anything happening in January. I think I think what the rumor mill's like. It wouldn't surprise me if there was talk, but that can be dismissed. He's 100% around for the rest of this season, and then I think a lot will depend on what his wishes are, because Klopp and Liverpool's stance has always been that if someone actually wants to leave and they give them enough time to source a replacement, then they wouldn't stand in their way. But at the minute, Mo Salah does not look to me like someone who's thinking about a fresh challenge. I think actually when you speak to people around the club, he's been energised by the injection of fresh blood into the squad this season. That thought of actually, we are capable of competing for and winning big trophies again. And I think that excites him. And also I think, when you see the the goals he scored already this season, was he up to 15 in all comps? And you just think, why would you go to a much lesser league? Why would you, he's still rewriting the record books at Liverpool. Every single week it feels like there's another Salah record to be broken. Recently, joining the 200 club in terms of goals for Liverpool. And he feeds off that. He loves writing his name into the history books of the club. So yeah, I think it will be a delicate negotiation process. I think in terms of, because obviously he's the highest earner at the club, and he'll want to be suitably remunerated for that. And of course, I think by the time his current deal is up, he'll be kind of approaching 33. So, but when you look at him, I don't see any reason why Salah can't keep doing what he's doing into kind of his 36, 37 even, because he is unique, and you just so much of it will hinge on what he himself wants, and at the minute he seems incredibly happy where he is.
But you can also understand from a Saudi Arabia perspective, especially the Pro League, you've got probably the biggest Muslim star at a good age who has kind of won everything with his current club. Of course, the record's been set and stuff, but, in their pursuit for excellence and pursuit for what they want, in a weird way, I look at it, and we've spoken about this before, he's a bigger star for them than Cristiano Ronaldo because he ticks all those boxes.
Yeah, he really does. I remember being over in Qatar when Liverpool won the Club World Cup in 2019, and it was it was kind of Salah mania on a level I'd not seen before, and I've travelled all over the world covering Liverpool, and just the noise inside the stadium every time he touched the ball, and the screams from the fans outside the team hotel, and it's difficult to put into words just how high his profile is in that part of the world. So you knew last summer when Liverpool turned down that offer that was rising to £150 million. We all knew that wasn't the end of it. We knew they'd be back. If not in January, then next summer. But I don't know. You also look at it and you think from Salah's perspective. You look at someone like Jordan Henderson, who has gone over there and is obviously earning a hell of a lot of money, but he's coming back and playing for England, and people are questioning kind of like whether he's playing at a high enough level to really do himself justice for his country. And so you wonder whether that's food for thought for some of these players as well, because it's not as if of course Mo Salah could treble, quadruple his wages, but I think it comes back to your motivation. He's never smacked to me as someone who that is something that really drives him in terms of his bank balance. I think what really excites him is rewriting record books and winning big trophies. And I'm not convinced that even next summer is that really what he's ready for, because he could effectively go over there in 3 or 4 years' time, I think, and still probably be by far and away the biggest star and the biggest talent over there.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Let's look at the AFCON situation, and especially that January period as well. And you look at this intense, schedule over the Christmas period. We're coming into sort of the back end of the season post January. You will miss Mo Salah's firing power with injuries as well, and that Liverpool have to be sort of thinking about that as well.
Yeah, it is gonna pose a real challenge. I think there's been. I don't think it's clear yet exactly when Salah will go. There's I think Klopp was asked recently whether he knew whether he'd be around for that FA Cup tie against Arsenal on January the 7th, and he said that's still to be agreed. And then you could be looking at up to a month without him. And Ben Doak, a really talented young winger, would have, I think, probably been in line for a fair amount of minutes. He's now going to be recovering from knee surgery. So you're probably looking at Harvey Elliott. Dominic Szoboszlai has actually played wide right before. Yet do you really want to move him out the middle? I think probably not. Cade Gordon as another young academy graduate who's endured a real torrid kind of 18 months with injuries. It actually was one of the few that shone in the dead rubber in the Europa League recently against Union Saint-Gilloise. And he must be looking at it and thinking, wow, because usually on that right hand side there is no route into the team because Salah's such a machine, he doesn't miss games. But so I'm sure Cade Gordon will be looking at that, and Diogo Jota is pretty close to a comeback as well after a hamstring injury, and he can play on the right hand side. So Klopp does have options, yet of course it just changes the entire kind of dynamic of Liverpool's attack because so much goes through Salah, and and also people, I think it kind of goes under the radar as well, just how much he does for the team in terms of holding the ball up, linking play. He's such a creative force as well. When you look at his assist numbers, it's not just the goals you're going to be missing. So and you've also got Wataru Endo is off to the Asia Cup around the same time in January. So Liverpool really, really can't afford to pick up any more injuries because they've been dropping pretty regularly over the last few weeks, and then with those two departing in January, you don't want that squad to be depleted any further, especially with some of the challenges they've got coming up.
So quick one, give the Liverpool fans an early Christmas present. Are they going to do Arsenal on the weekend? It's a big one.
Yeah, do you know what? I think it just felt like that win over West Ham was was the perfect way to go into it. And I think also with the Klopp kidology saying, come on, you don't need to rely on me having an argument with the opposition coach, which is obviously a reference to his spat with Arteta a couple of years ago that fired everyone up. I think, I think the stage is set for a cracking game, and I think it'll just be such a different game as well to the one against Man United. Roy Keane didn't like Virgil van Dijk saying it, but Van Dijk was right. There was only one team that was really trying to win that game, and Arsenal won't come and play the same way. They will be more expansive. They will ask more questions of Liverpool. There will be more space in behind for Liverpool to exploit. I think Arsenal, they do command respect because I think, when I've watched them this season, they seem to be playing. Last season, you always felt there was so much emotion attached to the way Arsenal played, and that can go one or two ways, and sometimes it probably cost them in the end. I think now they're a bit calmer, a bit more methodical, and it will be a real difficult test for Liverpool. But it feels like the stage is set for Liverpool to really make a statement on Saturday night. So they just need to go out there, and there's no doubt that Klopp will get the response he asked for from the fans. It's just whether the players can produce on the field, because it'll definitely be noisy enough off it.
You know what, James? Expect a bit of social media interaction from me if Arsenal manage to get a result against Liverpool at Anfield. All right, thanks so much for your time. And also, thank you all for continuing to listen and support this show through 2023. Check out the latest episode of Walk On, our dedicated Liverpool podcast, for more from James. Please remember to rate and review the podcast if you're enjoying it. Hit follow or subscribe wherever you are listening so you don't miss an episode when we return in early January. Adam Leventhal is here tomorrow with the full weekend preview. Merry Christmas to all of you that are celebrating it, but most of all, enjoy the football. We'll see you soon. If you like this video, click subscribe for more content like this. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season to bring you the inside track to the biggest stories in football. If you'd like to listen to the full episodes for free, search the Athletic Football Podcast wherever you get your podcasts from.